So today's presentation is an introduction to the InPlaLabs theoretical framework, and the first presentation is going to be about transdisciplinary planning perspective, principles towards climate resilient, inclusive, and people-centric cities. So over 50% of the global population live in cities. While this value can be as high as 80% when accounting for towns and suburbs, cities also generate more than 80% of the global economic output and more than 70% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. So by 2050, cities will increase by an additional 2.5 billion people, and without effective policies to support the net zero carbon and climate resilient transitions, global urbanization at this speed and scale is likely to drive a major increase in the greenhouse gas emissions. So resilience to climate change can only be achieved when you look at all parts of the puzzle. Resilient cities require integrated approaches across different disciplines, and climate change demands innovative and holistic approaches. Firstly, let's start by knowing the meaning of a transdisciplinary approach. So a transdisciplinary approach is basically a methodology crossing several disciplinary boundaries, creating a holistic approach to solve complex problems. A transdisciplinary approach often fosters bottom-up collaboration, provides an environment for mutual learning, and enhances the knowledge of all participants. So this approach has been used to address complex global concerns, beginning with climate change and extending into many areas, including socio-political problems. Now, why transdisciplinary planning is important? Because urban challenges are complex, interconnected, and climate sensitive. And because the single discipline approaches are insufficient to address urban resilience, equity, sustainability. Transdisciplinary here blends the knowledge across planning, ecology, sociology, technology, and all the relevant fields to address complex challenges that face the built environment. So in order to reverse the global climate change, it is necessary to contribute to creating more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient cities. Now, these are some of the core dimensions of the sustainable cities and introduction as well to the three main pillars of the InPlaLabs project, which are the inclusive, people-centric, and the climate resilient city. Now, let's start by defining each one of those pillars. The inclusive city is the one that provides equal access to social, economic, and political opportunities for all urban residents. Residents in an inclusive city are enabled and empowered to share in the growth and prosperity of the city by avoiding marginalization in terms of access to basic urban services, social engagement, and political participation. People-centric urban design and planning is kind of a shift in how we build cities from a car-oriented approach and freestanding buildings to an emphasis on the human being as the users of the public space. And this can be done by understanding how people experience space, their needs, and providing tailored solutions. And finally, the climate resilience is the capacity of natural, social, and economic ecosystems to cope with climate events, trends, or disturbance by responding or recognizing in ways that maintain essential function, identity, and structure while retaining the capacity for adaptation, learning, and transformation. And here are some of the factors that are essential for understanding sustainable cities. These are three main factors that are fundamental for analyzing sustainable cities. The spatial factor, which mainly refers to the built environment and infrastructure. The social aspects that can address discrimination, marginalization by creating opportunities for individuals and groups to have a sense of belonging and rooms to participate in the society. And finally, the economic dimension, which ensure opportunities for all to contribute and share in the rising and growing economy. Now, here are some of the key principles for creating sustainable cities, which are accessibility, affordability, diversity and inclusion, social equity, participation and engagement, safety and security, education and awareness, as well as evidence-based design, planning, and approaches. Now, we can also find that building sustainable cities and communities is among the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which is goal number 11, creating sustainable cities and communities, which is about to make cities and human settlements more inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. This can improve our understanding of how ecological, cultural, and the built environment factors the different built environment factors may interact, and whether trade-offs should be defined and agreed in specific situations. Now, in this diagram here, it shows the relations between this goal and all the other goals. It was drawn to visualize the entry point character of the sustainable goal number 11, which is about sustainable cities, with respect to the other 16 goals. Notably, most issues in the goals have an urban interpretation or an urban dimension, and their complexity, interaction, and trade-offs can also be found in cities. And thus, urban challenges and goals can support the implementation of other goals. These are the some of the targets of the creating sustainable cities. The first one is about creating safe and affordable housing, affordable and sustainable transport systems, inclusive and sustainable urbanization, protect the world cultural heritage, reduce the adverse effects of natural disasters, reduce the environmental impact of cities, strong national and regional development planning, implementing policies for inclusion, resource efficiency, and disaster risk reduction, and finally, support least developed countries in sustainable, resilient buildings. Now, in order to achieve the sustainable cities, green technology is a key factor to foster more sustainable urban development. And this includes all aspects of city planning, including transportation, the built environment, infrastructure, telecommunications, and energy. So the green technologies also support green living practices, including recycling and the use of energy and renewable resources as well. So what are the green skills? Green skills are the skills that promote economic growth while protecting the environment. This is basically the definition, but the United Nations define green skills as skills that are knowledge, abilities, values, and attitudes needed to live in, develop, and support a sustainable and resource-efficient society. So the green technology here is the key to a sustainable future. And in order to adapt to greener practices and build healthier cities, we also need digital skills, smart technologies, technology-driven efficiency, and data insights. So why is the green digital transformation or the green digital skills important? It is important to help cities and regions use the digital technologies to support climate goals while ensuring equity, privacy, and resilience. This also aligns with the EU Green Deal's aim to leverage digital tools for a carbon-neutral, sustainable future. So why do we need green and digital skills? As we combat climate change and aim for carbon neutrality, innovation in science and technology is essential. So basically, we need the green and digital tools for two main reasons. The first one is to address environmental crisis. Green skills will help to effectively combat the challenges confronting modern society, such as climate change, pollution, and resource depletion. The second reason is to foster economic growth. Green technology industries, such as renewable energy and sustainable product development, offer rooms for generating new jobs and driving economic growth. Green skills were also emphasized in the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. In goal number 9, which is about industry, innovation, and infrastructure, it includes the target of upgrading infrastructure, retrofitting industries to make them more sustainable with increased resource efficiency and greater adoption of clean and environmentally sound technologies. We can also find it in goal number 12, which is about responsible consumption and production. It includes the target of achieving the sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources by 2030. There are several types of green skills, and they can mainly be categorized into three categories: technical skills, operation management skills, and communication skills. So the technical skills can include aspects like renewable energy technologies, energy-saving research, and sustainable farming, while the operation or the management skills include environment management, system design, green business model development. And finally, the communication skills can include environmental education, communication, and dissemination of environmental-related information. Of course, different countries and regions focus on different green skills, and the scope and content of green technologies are constantly changing as the technology advances in environmental and sustainability. So just to summarize the difference between the two skills, the green skills often refers to competencies such as enabling low carbon, circular, and nature passive solutions, while the digital ones refers to competencies to collect, model, and exploit socio-spatial data. Examples of the green skills can include climate risk analysis, nature-based solutions, renewable energy planning, circular materials, stakeholders co-creation, while examples of the digital skills needed can include GIS skills, remote sensing, BIM, 3D city models, AI analytics, urban digital twins, and more. So these are just some of the key green skills and digital skills needed to foster sustainable cities, categorized by each cluster for the climate risk, nature-based solution, energy and mobility, circularity, social and equity. And in the key digital skills, it can include advanced GIS, digital twin building, BIM, and the use of data and AI, such as the Python, machine learning, dashboarding, governance, and open data policy. So in conclusion, green skills are essential tools in the battle against climate change and building of a sustainable future.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
This brings us to the end of our
very happy to
presentation,
be
and
online
thank you so much for your
with
patience.
you, not physically, fortunately, but we're gonna present now a very interesting presentation about mobility planning and how can mobility and transport be effectively planned or effectively addressed to tackle all these issues that we heard before from Mariam. And also we're going to show some insights about the integrated characteristics of planning and integrated nature of mobility planning. So we have to start by denoting a very, very essential difference. When we talk about mobility, transportation, and all these kinds of very interesting topics, we have to understand the difference that mobility is something that we have. On the contrary, transportation is something that we do. And mobility is connected to somehow the needs that we have, and also is a right. It's the right to move freely and to have the ability, to be more exact, to have the ability to move freely. So this difference is very, very, very fundamental when we talk about these issues. Just a note about transportation is like something that could relate to freight transport, or to the action of moving, and not the general right and the general ability. So in our presentation, we're going to focus on mobility, because we want these aspects of planning to be addressed. And mobility is about people, is about human-centric planning, and of course that's why we should deal with mobility in an integrated way. So it's very important that mobility focuses on delivering satisfaction on social needs. So we have to understand and improve mobility for what? For achieving a better quality of life, for shaping new mobility cultures. And these mobility cultures are really important when we want to build or to sustain our cities differently. A city that has different interactions through mobility and different kinds of experiences for the people is really into the right path of delivering a sustainable city as a whole. What else? What else? It's even important that mobility affects our natural and built environment. So through transforming mobility and through promoting a different paradigm of mobility, we can achieve different built environments and different landscapes. So it's really significant to build a close relationship between these two environments, and mobility should be dealt accordingly. Another very important factor is economy. So through delivering different mobility plans and through addressing mobility needs differently, for instance, to pedestrianize streets or to give people more space to walk and cycle and give space to people with disabilities, it's very important that this could be complemented with new economic activities that might emerge. And it's all this is supported by research, and we have to promote it with our planning initiatives. What is another important thing that we have noted here in the presentation is that efficient mobility solutions could lead to reduce costs, and if we reduce costs, we can allocate funding to different actions and processes. So we have to cross the line and embark into a different kind of mobility, a mobility that is called sustainable mobility. So it's now a very popular term, is something that is well known compared to 20 and 30 years ago that was firstly introduced. And sustainable mobility tries to somehow combine or somehow transfer the sustainability goals. We saw some in the previous presentation, and all these goals should be transferred into mobility. That's why sustainable tries to build a system that gives emphasis on human experiences, not just efficiency or actions coming from cost-benefit analysis. It's like something more social, something more connected to people. Also, very important thing is that through sustainable mobility, we try to mitigate climate change to address the impacts on the environment, both built and natural. And what else is that we try to promote public health. And after COVID-19, it was signified that sustainable mobility could play a very specific and very compelling role into supporting public health. And of course, another point is that resources and energy and all this stuff is limited, so we have to allocate it efficiently in order to be sustainable. And that's why our movement, the way that we move, or the way that we have the ability to move, is very important and very related to energy and resources. So the basic characteristics is like that we are differentiating in a very intense and very distinguished way from the traditional transport planning approach. And now the sustainable urban mobility practices are inherently connected to an integrated way of planning. Before sustainable mobility, the traditional transport planning was focused on traffic, focused on cars, motorized mobility in general, or it was led by experts and all this kind of traffic engineering. We addressed public space or traffic flows like water, and it was fluid mechanics that dominated. So we try now to embark into still evidence-based and still a focus on different tools. We're gonna talk about that later in later presentations, but right now sustainable urban mobility is something that focuses on people. It's something that tries to achieve a balanced development between different transport modes, not only motorized movement. It tries to set some axioms and cost-effective solutions. And of course, it goes beyond these kind of separate planning procedures. For instance, the traditional planning was only about traffic, as I said, and urban planning was something different. Participatory planning was not into play. It was something strange, let's say. But right now we try to combine all of them and to employ them into sustainable mobility planning. So this point of integration between transport, land use, environment policies, and participation is really, really fundamental for sustainable mobility. So the sustainable mobility goals would be stemming from the sustainability goals in general. We have economics, we have environment and society. So all these, the intersection of them deliver sustainability, and sustainable mobility couldn't be something different. It is based on that goal. So we have affordability, we have these kind of resources and energy efficiency and effective management. We also have accessibility. We saw that as a very, very important goal before, because without accessibility is like having people without their actions and their voice, that we can say, due to the very, very specific nature of accessibility, that we have to ensure it through planning. Sustainable mobility is really, really important because it tries to ensure accessibility from scratch and does not only cares about efficiency. So we also have economic development with different and emerging like aspects of economic activities and opportunities. We also have public health and safety, and of course, last but not least, we also have social equity, which is an overall goal of sustainability. And all these kind of different goals makes a new landscape of mobility. So we have, when we talk about mobility right now, it is imperative to connect it with a sustainable. We cannot deal with mobility without mentioning sustainability, or even more importantly, without really embarking into measures and strategies that aspire to create a sustainable mobility system. So we can see the principles one by one. We have 12 very fundamental principles that could be very helpful when we deal about sustainable mobility planning. And before starting presenting these principles, I have to underline that when we want to plan something, is not like we just focus on the planning or the design itself. It's like we want to have a vision. We want to have some principles. We want to transfer theory into practice. That's why we should know, we should adhere to these different principles. And that's why 12 principles could be very helpful. I know there are many of them. They are not 5, 3, or 1. it could be easier if we had one principle for instance, but 12 are more detailed, and if we really comprehend them, we can then build really and truly sustainable mobility plans, sustainable mobility implementation strategies, and all these kind of stuff. So the first principle is about integrated transport and land use. Right now, we cannot face mobility problems without considering land uses and activities. It's something that is really the initial principle that we should build upon. The second one is protect the environment. We said that, but how we can protect the environment? Firstly, we have to understand and we have to measure the appropriate criteria. We have to find what is really important for the environment. So we cannot just state about environmental friendliness without specifically addressing criteria, without specifically addressing measurements, and without building a narrative where the problems are and where the issues could be found. So protect the environment, but with specific goals and with specific objectives and measurements. Third one is about taking social objectives and social equity into consideration. We have to promote inclusiveness. Sustainable mobility is about addressing the people's needs, and people's needs are really diverse. We don't have one group or two. We have many groups, and firstly we have to understand their needs, and then strengthen social cohesion, inclusiveness, and identify strategy about accessibility. As I said, accessibility is really important, and we can see that into principle 3. Right now, we also have economic development. We talked about that a couple of minutes ago, but supporting economic development through sustainable mobility is really important. And when we talk about economic development, is not about all this great variety of activities, but to connect each activity with its transport mode, with its mobility way, that we can do it depending on the city context, depending on how we view our cities and stuff like that. So economic development could be supported by sustainable mobility, but different activities could be supported in different cases. And as I said before about pedestrianization, when we want to reallocate street space and create opportunities for economic development, that economic development could be certain. For example, you don't build malls into historic center when you want people to approach them by walking or by public transport. You build something which is more connected to the human scale, a great variety of different shops that are approachable by walking, and you can also shop there by walking or cycling. They're not these really large buildings that should be approached by car, or you couldn't buy anything without having your car with you. So supporting economic development is very important, but we have to understand and identify the context. Principle 5 is about strategy, because without strategy, we cannot deliver all this integrated package. We can deliver, if possible, different and separate strategies or separate actions. But without an overall strategy, without the vision, without the goals, without the bigger picture of sustainability, we cannot inherently combine all these processes of integrated planning. Not only mobility, I'm talking about strategies that integrate mobility and all the others very important pillars of integrated planning. So strategy, very important. We start every time with our strategy, and then we go to the measures. Without strategy, we cannot just state, and we cannot just mention measures. They're not, let's say, connected or integrated, as this is the right term. Principle 6 is about considering all transport modes. You can see here reverse pyramid, which is like giving emphasis, as we said before, into active mobility or public transport, and then comes motorized mobility, and specifically car. So we have to give emphasis to all transport mode and prioritize them accordingly. For instance, in a historic center, we can prioritize the sustainable transport by supporting walking and people with disabilities or cycling. On the other hand, in the suburbs or in no man's land, we can say we can give way to cars and motorized mobility. Principle 7 is about transportation and transport demand efficiently. Not all the measures should be addressed to cars and motorized mobility, because right now, in many cases, still, we can see that traffic management is connected only to cars, and traffic engineers only care about the motorized flows and how we can allocate them better, or how we can distribute the time in signals better, or how we can build different kind of motorways and stuff like that. No, traffic management is not only about cars, is also about public transport, of course, but very, very, very importantly is about people, is about cyclists, people with disabilities, pedestrians, and all these kind of different groups that could be entailed into active transport. Principle 8, we have delivery. We have the supply chain, and we also have this freight transport into cities, because we tend to discuss about urban planning, mobility planning, without thinking about freight transport. And when we talk about cities, okay, one can say that freight transport is not about people, but when you deal with it into cities, it affects people, it affects how we move and how traffic flows could be encountered, and also how the city itself operates. So management of supply chain into or urban delivery topics is really, really important as well. We have to embark into a planning strategy that also takes care of urban delivery. Principle 9 is about seeking and implementation guidance. We have to step into long-range implementation, long-range strategy. We have to think for the future. We don't have to limit ourselves when we plan into short-term actions. Okay, short-term actions could be implemented very, very shortly, and we can see quick changes, but the game is strategic. The game should be coordinated in a long-term way, and we have to set our visions, as we said before, and vision demands a long-range implementation. That's why the implementation guidance should be clearly directed to short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. Okay, principle 10 is about financial guidance, because unfortunately, without the proper funding, we cannot implement all these attractive and sustainable and accessible things and strategies and policy measures and interventions that we want. Therefore, we have to adopt the low cost or the proper cost solutions. We have to find proper funding and every time sustainable mobility practices are really connected to funding and financial things. It's not so creative, but we have to do it creative in order to ensure the resources for implementing all our strategies. Principle 8, not 8, principle 11. Principle 11, without measuring our performance, without having indicators, without having this evidence-based monitoring. So we have to go beyond evidence-based planning. We have to also care about evidence-based monitoring. We should monitoring our different strategies, different scenarios, different planning topics. And our last principle is public engagement, is participation. So it's the last but not the least, and it complements all the way, starting from the integration, principle 1 to principle 12, which is really underlying that a really important factor and a principle about sustainable mobility planning and planning in general. But you have to take into account that participation in sustainable mobility planning is not something very traditional. It comes to play into the very recently in Greece, for example. It's something that started some 5 or 6 years ago, right before COVID. So we can see that the participation is not something related and much related to planning. We have to ensure that, and this principle is really important. Before we close our presentation, the sustainable transport modes and the users. So the transport modes, the main are the following. We can see diverse things. We search into one, for example, cycling, micromobility. We could see different ways of e-scooters, segways, and other novel tools and modes, but the main ones are walking, the wheelchair movement, the cycling, the micromobility, which this consists of active movement. Cycling and micromobility is in between, and we can see motorized movement, public transport, and the e-scooters when they are, or e-bikes. I'm not presenting here motorized cars and or motorbikes, because we are referring to sustainable transport modes, and we can see public transport, the road public transport, and the fixed route. So just a glimpse, the active transport is affordable, is environmental friendly, and cost effective, and also flexible. But we can see some several challenges, like the physical conditions may pose some difficulties. The weather conditions are really important, and we can see serious safety issues if we do not plan, if we do not prepare our landscape appropriately. So about public transport, they ensure road safety. They could be and they should be inclusive, because we are together and we travel together with foreigners and people that we do not know, and it's really important to merge. It's really important to make mobility and transport a collective activity. They are environmental friendly, but we can see challenges like affordability inequities. We can see different funding that we need to build, for example, a metro line or a tram line, and somehow door-to-door solutions could be very costly. That's why public transport, the regular one, could be appropriate for specific cases like major arterials, and not to serve the needs of a neighborhood. That's why we can implement some on-demand solutions. So the users, this is going to be the final one of the final slides. The users demand different kinds of attention. We have a variety of users, we have complexity, interaction, different conflicts between them, the car user to pedestrian, people with disabilities, and public transport modes that are not accessible. For example, they do not have ramps, so it's a conflict. A person with disabilities cannot enter such a vehicle, and we can see also cooperation. So the users are really diverse. We do not have one user; there are many of them, so we can and we should take this into account. Here is a picture of different modes and different users, so we can see this combination of the users and the modes. And we have some pictures here just to understand beyond these infographics, you can understand the diversity. And that's why I should close my presentation about integrating urban dimension and transport dimension. These should go together. Otherwise, I think our planning would be not so effective towards sustainability. It would be effective towards other goals. For example, efficiency, if we think so. But even efficiency needs this integrated approach right now. So sustainable mobility in a nutshell, we need a stronger public transport network. We need to support active ways of traveling. We need multimodal terminals and multimodal transport hubs, and of course, a very, very sustainable and efficient zero-emission delivery and, in general, transport system and inclusivity. I would like to thank you for your time and thank you for your attention.
We can now continue with the next presentation, Participatory Planning by commonspace.
So hello, everyone. I also want to welcome you to this lecture. I'm Dionysia Koutsi. I'm an urban planner. I'm coming from Greece, and I'm representing commonspace. We are practitioners, so today we will see through the different parts of the lecture some theoretical aspects about participatory planning, but I will also try to transfer you also to the actual and practical world and what participatory planning means in practice and how we use it in our case sometimes, and also how it was used in different examples of Europe as well. So with today's lecture, the actual goal is to understand this theoretical foundation, of the practical implications. And after leaving this today, the first day of this mini course, you will understand the historical and political origins of participatory planning. You will identify some theoretical frameworks and some methodologies. And through some real-world examples, we will understand better how participatory planning is implemented through physical and digital applications across different examples. Of course, I will also invite you to see our next tomorrow's lecture, because there we will focus a little bit more on the practical tools, and we will also do a hands-on experience on participatory planning. So there you will have a more deep understanding on how this is implemented. So in this specific course, and now we are in the first part, in the theoretical framework, we will see some definitions of participatory planning. I will try to connect how this aspect is related to the climate resilience goals and integrated planning, because this is the subject also of InPlaLabs network, but also it's a greater demand coming from policy level, but also from local residents and local authorities, as also we have already heard from previous presentations. And finally, we will see some specific case studies. So we understand that in the current world, we can see in these illustrations on the left, we can see that different fragmented climate actions, inactions in most of the cases, and unsustainable development reinforce, let's say, a business as usual model that doesn't succeed till today to create this more sustainable future that protect us from climate change implications. So this path maintains harmful practices across key systems like energy, infrastructure, industry, and ecosystems, leading even further to environmental degradation and missed climate goals. This is a continuous, let's say, practice that, although we can see some different fragmented actions cannot lead eventually to a more sustainable and resilient future. On the right hand, we can see how a more transformative in terms of societal and climate actions planning framework is represented and how it can support a more climate resilient development. This approach involves coordinated transitions in 5 key systems like energy, industry, infrastructure, land and water, for example. It promotes sustainability, ecosystem protection and resilience, and a low carbon future. But as we can see, at the center of this approach is the societal transition, and how we can achieve a societal transition if we do not engage all the involved stakeholders that have the power or affect and also affected from planning decisions and decision making in general. So this understanding that is integrated in a high level of degree in policy documents around the world and in European Union sets local communities at the center, and we hear, especially the last decade, all the time that we need to integrate stakeholders, we need to integrate local communities, we need to understand their needs, and we need to engage their needs and expectations in local, urban, regional, or developmental planning in general. This rationale is not something new, though, because all this is reflected in the participatory meaning in general, participatory planning in general, which initially started back on the 60s and 70s, initially as a movement, later it became a necessity and was formed as a structure and stroke methodology, which emphasized the importance of involving local communities in the planning and decision-making process. Specifically, it started in the post-war World War II period, where people reacted to the more modernized, let's say, way of planning, which was bottom-up and more technical, excluding local needs in a high degree. So it was a movement, and because it affects in a high level how the cities specifically are formed, it affected urban planning and urban design and architecture in a high degree, and a lot of practitioners of the time developed different approaches and also tried to integrate this term into their work. Of course, because we are talking about a process that involves people, what we saw in practice was very different in each case. So a lot of academics, and based on their experience, defined different, created different approaches on what participatory planning means and how it is realized. One of the most representative definitions comes from Creighton, which states that participatory process is a process in which the concerns, needs, and values of a social group are integrated into decision-making. both from the point of view of the governments. So here we can see that it's, let's say, a political action, because integrating local communities into policy making comes from, let's say, bottom-up policy formation, understanding, and approach, in order to ensure that bottom-up exercises can be actually integrated in the whole governance system. And also from the point of view of corporate governance. What all these definitions have in common, because I have included in the end of the presentation some additional references. And also, we will see in the tomorrow's course, of course, more definitions based on that. But what they have in common, and what we identified as the key the key points of what participatory planning means and is eventually, is that it ensures, first of all, the interaction between the agency or institution that makes decisions and the people who want to participate. So we can say that it's a process that can build and create the dialogue between the policy makers and the stakeholders. So we are in it is the process that we can find in between, and can, without very excessive reactions, but in a formed way, to create this dialogue to be fruitful and eventually impactful. In the second feature, we have the structured process for active participation. It is not a process that happens by chance. It's, of course, it is a discussion, but it's not a discussion without a goal and without a target. It's a structured process that that leads to specific results that eventually can impact the decision making. Participants, on the third feature, has a significant degree of influence. We do this exercise because what people are sharing with us as planners and facilitators of this process could be used in order to change the planning, to change the decision, or to affect somehow the result. And finally, there is an application in the development of the policies. So we can say that it's a process that can affect the whole policy formation at the end. The core principles now of the participatory planning process can be summarized as, first of all, the inclusivity. Through participatory planning, we should ensure that all those involved are integrated in different ways. And this means that if, for example, we are planning a schoolyard, we should find a way in order to include students of different ages, neighbors of different ages again, or different political or cultural background. So in this way, we need to be inclusive. We need to be transparent and accessible. So we need clear communication of what is the actual goal of this process and what will be the impact, and how try to integrate as many as possible to that. It provides ownership and collaboration of a high degree. When you integrate people from the very beginning of a process, they can feel that they are part of this process, and there are several theoretical backgrounds about how integration can ensure protection eventually, if you were part of how you will design the square around your neighborhood, for example, a public space. It is evident that you will be more willing to protect it and keep it clean in the near future. So it's a process that can create this kind of sense of place and ownership at the end. It's context specific. We cannot touch all the aspects of a problem in one a specific exercise. We need to be precise, we need to have a goal, and we need to be more targeted on what is the specific outcome of this process. It helps to understand the problem and collaborate with those involved and affected, and maybe create the problem in order to find solutions to prevent it in the future or to change the current situation. And finally, by this kind of collaboration contexts, we can co-produce knowledge, create value, and increase knowledge around, because of course we may be experts in urban planning, we don't have the knowledge on how local communities experience the public space or their neighborhood. What is also very important is that participatory planning, of course, it's not narrow. We have different levels and degrees of participation. If we just inform people, or we do it in order to legalize some practices or some decisions already taken, it's not considered a participatory planning exercise. But if we do a consultation process or a co-design process, then we have different levels of degree. Of course, gathering input, because here we are in the middle level of participation, where we gather the input, but eventually we don't know for sure in which degree this kind of data will be used to affect the decision making. But as we go upper to the ladder that Einstein, even back to 1969, stated, the ownership and the level of participation increases. Why participatory planning is very important for climate change adaptation? First of all, through engaging locals in this kind of policies, can ensure spatial and social justice, because it empowers marginalized groups and voices in climate decisions, and also can create plans that can prevent unequal climate burdens in, for example, low-income areas. We hear their needs, and somehow you can create a pressure that more measures can be taken in areas that are not in the first, let's say, line when it comes to decision making. It can be flexible and adaptable, so allows plans to evolve as the climate condition changes and the local realities are affected differently in the same climate. So in this way, it can ensure this kind of adaptability. We integrate local knowledge in the plans, and it's an aspect that, first of all, it supports us create the knowledge on what their needs what they want, but it can also help us find some solutions that maybe scientific knowledge cannot understand when it comes to implementation aspects. As I said before, ownership and acceptance is really important. Through these participation exercises, where you have people of different backgrounds working on the same subject, it creates it can create a network, and empowers, in most of the cases, collective actions towards a common goal. And finally, it encourages the co-creation of green infrastructures, and it can regenerate solutions that are really important at the local level to ensure environmental sustainability. Now proceeding to some examples. Here we can see one of the first examples of participatory planning that, in my point of view, it can It can show how architectures back in time could understand how our people are moving. Here we can see the Oregon experiment in Oregon University, where planners were asked to create the spaces, the public spaces and common spaces of that the students used. And in order to understand how it created a more adjustable plan where they created, let's say, they called it a pattern language. Here we can see the different days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, where they observed how the users use the space and in the different days. So they created some patterns, and based on these patterns, they co-created some environments where they could change. It was some more adjustable structures where they could change the layout of the space in order to fit local needs. Of course, this is an example of a more building space, but nowadays we can see that especially where participatory plan in countries where participatory planning is more integrated in their policy making philosophy, it is used also to different to a more urban landscape scale. So here we can see an example that is related also with climate resilient actions, and it is the Water Squares program in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, where they co-designed through several participatory planning exercises some squares, because they have a very significant problem with floods, because Netherlands is, as we know, a country that is below the surface of water. So they co-created the spaces with the local residents in order to ensure that they create, first of all, appealing urban spaces for them to be used, but also at the same time, spaces that they prevent urban flooding, and they also ensure that they control somehow the heat. It is a very short video. I don't know if I can play it here, maybe. No. Ah. Maybe if it's not. No. Okay. I can add the links in the chat, and they can see afterwards the presentation. So now you can't see anything.
Yes. Okay.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry for that. So the second example is about Barcelona superblocks, which is one of the most successful examples on how in very dense urban environments we can create more people-friendly environments that also can cure, let's say, challenges like traffic congestion, air and noise pollution, but also urban heat island effects, and increase the limited green spaces. In this project, several participatory design processes were implemented by interviewing stakeholders, do a collective mapping on how they use these spaces. What is the idea behind of that is that they closed some roads that were inside the buildings. They did pedestrian roads, and they create more bigger, let's say somehow, blocks of housing where the central points were car-free, and it created some playgrounds, some urban spaces, green spaces where people could use. In the video that we will share with you afterwards, you can see some interviews from local people after the development of the super blocks, where they talk about their experience in the participatory planning processes, and how now this neighborhood feel more like that it represents their needs. And in these different 6 neighborhoods that were created in this way, we can see, of course, different implementations, because if you have a lot of families in the one case, more common spaces for children, for example, were created, and you can see that it changed a lot also the sense of community and how people were actively outside their homes than previously, where these streets were occupied by cars. I want to close this part of the presentation with some key, let's say, takeaways of what participatory planning is. First of all, integration nowadays with this very wide range of challenges is imperative. It's not something that we wish we want to have because it's nice and because it's nice to talk with people. It's imperative, and we need to adjust the decisions to what makes the community more livable and livable. So capacity and trust in this kind of practices is fundamental, because people are giving their time, their experiences, and they need to know that afterwards this kind of data will be used for their benefit, and there will be an outcome of the process. As an urban planner, that you adjust this kind of practices, you need to be adaptable, because each case, each group, even the goal is the same, it's different. So you need to be able to understand your audience and create this kind of practices. We need a shift to what we do with this business as usual practice. And finally, it's important to understand the human dimension of resilience and what it means to create spaces that ensures the well-being of the residents in the cities. Here you can see the references and further reading. I think we will share. Everything will be available, so you will be able to see this. And of course, we will be available for more information if needed. Thank you.
And we conclude the morning's presentations by a presentation from Urban Calculator on evidence-based planning for addressing climate change and contemporary urban life. So, Iana, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Ioanna Stavroulaki. I'm a co-founder of Urban Calculator and also an associate professor at the Spatial Morphology Group at Chalmers University of Technology. Let me see here. And you still see, you saw my second slide now, right?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay, so I will have a short presentation on evidence-based design and planning, and later on we continue with some more methodological, some methods and tools on how to go about it. So evidence-based design and planning is an approach that uses evidence from research and urban analysis to inform and improve design decisions. And in our work, we mostly focus on evidence and analysis that link the spatial forms and structures to urban processes of socioeconomic, but also social ecologic nature. For example, movement patterns, segregation, development of local markets, microclimate biodiversity, and other ecosystem services. Evidence-based design did not stream from urban practice or architecture, but it actually draws from the principles of evidence-based medicine. And this requires, again, that design decisions are informed by the best available research. And in contrast, if we look at the kind of the typical urban design process in kind of a conventional design process, where we often rely on intuition, artistic inspiration, or best practices, so precedences, traditions, and so on. Evidence-based design, on the other hand, emphasizes the use of rigorous scientific evidence to guide this decision-making and guide design choices. Now, there is a bit of a conflict because design is considered, it is a wicked or kind of ill-defined problem. What that means is that there are many solutions to a problem, and actually there is no perfect solution to the problems we have. So absolutely creative solutions are required, but this is what has dominated many of the teaching curricula in architectural and urban design schools at the expense of other sources of knowledge and other means we need to have to make informed design decisions. So again, creativity during the design process is not, of course, a problem. It is absolutely needed, but there has been a huge weight on generating creative ideas, and this has put other stages of the design process, such as knowledge accumulation, design evaluation, and design impact assessments to the background. So instead of the typical design process that, I mean, one starts with a design brief input, and there is an idea generalization drawing from wider issues, and then design iteration, design proposals, some evaluation, but that is often done externally to evaluate design proposals and then perhaps go on a next round of design iteration before one can reach the final design proposal. But this is not, I mean, this is very general, and it doesn't really capture what is actually happening in an urban design process and what is needed, again, within a more evidence-based approach. So basically what is needed is both an interconnected series of explorations that is sometimes led by logical thinking and evidence, and sometimes but intuitive creation. And what is added, as you see here, are two parts in this puzzle. One is generally called site analysis, and what this is that in the beginning of a design process, one spends a lot of time before starting generating ideas in analyzing the problems and also the site of intervention, because we are talking about an intervention in the built environment. And also there is a large part that comes before the generation of design ideas and the actual proposals. And this is the idea evaluation. There is some kind of assessment that goes within the design process and assesses internally from the designer team itself, not externally, assesses the design alternatives, the different design choices in order to arrive to the best possible outcome. And as Miriam said in the beginning, as Stefano said, we are facing great societal and environmental challenges. And this is, and it's clear now to almost all academics and professionals that are relying on best practices alone, intuition alone will not do, and we need a paradigm shift in the design practice, but also in the architectural profession, in the education, to be able to contribute to the solution of these complex challenges. So when we say evidence, what do we mean exactly? Because evidence can be many, And evidence, the use of evidence also is also discipline specific, so to say. We have evidence, you see, in a kind of a range, going from subjective evidence with high uncertainty on your left, and that includes opinions, subjective opinions, views, personal experiences, but also best practices kind of fall on the left side of this diagram. And these are, they should not actually, I mean, they should not be confused with evidence. In a way, they have a huge amount of uncertainty, a high degree of subjectivity. And they, I mean, they of course provide special ideas and solutions, but they lack the supporting theory to understand the mechanism why something works. So best practices, examples from previous, for example, urban design projects, give ideas, give some kind of experience, but they do not explain why things work the way they do. On the other hand, on the right side of this diagram, we see the objective evidence, and with high certainty, we talk about scientific proof. And this scientific proof might be reached within the medicine discipline, but as urban designers, we know we cannot achieve this type of scientific proof. I mean, there are some research studies that have achieved that, but they are not. I mean, they do not cover the problems we face within urban design. So evidence should instead be understood as defined in science, where it's divided into these gradients, and only the highest levels consider causation. So when we talk about, for example, quantitative spatial analysis, empirical studies, big data, urban analytics, field and observation studies, qualitative analysis, interviews, surveys, scientific reviews, state-of-the-art surveys. These are evidence resources for evidence-based design, and they all fall kind of in the middle between the subjective opinions and the scientific proof. But they should have an adequate level of accuracy and precision that can guide decision-making in a responsible manner. So we need to understand that we will face a certain level, we will face a level of uncertainty, of course, but we do need to move away from only being at the left side of this diagram, just relying on intuition, on personal experiences, or on best practices. Now we focus a lot on spatial analysis, as you saw, as a basic source of evidence when we work with, for example, urban design projects. Spatial analysis is key, both in the initial phases, to help identify and locate problems and resources in space in the site or the city or the urban area that we work with, but also during the design iterations in this idea evaluation phase, in order to help evaluate different scenarios and design alternatives, to assist with scenario assessment, with impact assessment, in order to reach the best possible final design proposal that answers the project aims and objectives in the best possible way. So spatial analysis is key, very important in this, both in the initial phases, but also throughout the design iterations, where the designers themselves can assess their own design scenarios, but also choose between design alternatives, and then get information, get input on how to improve their design choices before they arrive to a design proposal that will then be externally evaluated. It is very important to start working with this evidence-based design methodology from the early stages, and to employ spatial analysis from the early stages of design assessment. And the reason is that the further we are into a design project, the harder it is and the more costly it is to actually make any real changes. And it then takes a lot of time. It's very hard to change things. So it's very important to start with this relying on evidence, analyzing, getting input in the early stages of the design process where where changes are still feasible, and where the basic design choices are being made, the basic strategies are being made. Then it is more impactful, it is more efficient to have to start early with this assessment, let's say, and bringing in evidence in the design process. Of course, there is a lot of criticism. It is a design methodology, and there is a lot of criticism, as it was when it was first introduced in evidence-based medicine. Quotes like that: the population can be harmed by poor evidence, poor uses of good evidences, or both. So one example of things that can go wrong is that, and a criticism is that evidence-based design seems to offer one solution fits all answer to unique problems that are context specific. Well, I mean, this is not the case. Of course, this needs to be addressed by the designer, the architect, the urban designer. It requires, of course, careful use of evidence. One needs to find appropriate ways to apply general evidence to the design problem that is at hand. Should not only find relevant research evidence, but also being able to critically evaluate the quality and applicability to specific situations. And then validated spatial analysis is needed to evaluate design proposals, considering context and local qualities. An evidence-based designer, together with an informed client, of course, a client in the broader sense, can make design decisions based on the best information available from research and project evaluation. Critical thinking, of course, is key, is required to develop an appropriate solution to the design problem. So we talk about a methodology that lets the design be informed by evidence and not dictated by it. I will close with an example that shows the complexity of the problem, and that evidence-based design is important, but also integrated, to be done in an integrated manner, because sometimes the evidence we get is conflicting. A case in point is the density, urban density, that has been, I mean, the consensus or the kind of the traditional thinking about this is that the urban density and compactness is beneficial from cities. And I mean, it is, but there is a strong dichotomy between predominantly positive impacts of urban density linked to public infrastructure, to economy, to transport, sustainable mobility that Stefanos was talking about previously. But there are also predominantly negative impacts linked to ecology, climate, social issues, and health. So the evidence is conflicting, and then we need interdisciplinary teams and expertises. We need multiple evidence sources. We need integrated assessments of design solutions that take into account the complex socioeconomic and environmental challenges to create synergetic impacts and benefits, to address conflicts and prioritize actions in relation to the specific context always. So I will just want to close with this, and then we will continue later with concrete methodologies. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Yanna.